The hidden secrets of abandoned Appalachian towns. The Appalachian Mountains are full of whispers. They're ancient, weathered, and if you know how to listen, really listen, past the rustle of leaves and the call of a bird, you can hear the echoes of lives lived and lost. You can hear stories of towns that exploded out of nothing, fueled by coal and sheer grit, only to vanish back into the forest, leaving behind rusty, hollowed-out shells of what they once were. These hills hold secrets, woven from a strange and beautiful mix of Native American, European, and African American folklore. They tell stories of joy and hardship, of community and bone-deep isolation. But they also tell other stories, darker stories. Today, we're heading deep into the mountains to find one of these forgotten towns. We'll call it Silas Creek, because that's what the old stories name it, but you won't find it on any modern map. It's a place left to be reclaimed by nature, where the skeletons of homes stand like monuments to a time gone by. It's a place where chilling legends are said to still roam the empty streets, where terrifying creatures were whispered about in hushed tones, and where ghostly lights are said to still dance on the distant ridges. We're going to walk its overgrown paths, explore its decaying heart, and try to uncover the hidden secrets of this abandoned Appalachian town. Section 1. The journey begins. Our journey starts right where the paved roads give up and turn to gravel, and then, finally, to dirt. The farther we push into the mountain's embrace, the more the modern world just seems to peel away. Cell service was the first to go, a digital tether snapping and leaving us in a silence so profound it's almost unnerving. The landscape itself transforms. Gentle hills swell into steep, imposing slopes of granite and old-growth forest. The trees here just feel different, ancient. They lean over the narrow road, their branches twisting together like gnarled fingers, creating these long tunnels that blot out the sun. This is the heart of Appalachia, a region whose history is every bit as rugged and complex as its terrain. For centuries, these mountains were home to powerful Native American tribes like the Cherokee, who understood the rhythms of this land in a way newcomers never could. Their stories are the very bedrock of the region's folklore, full of spirits, great battles, and sacred places. Then the European settlers arrived, mostly Scots-Irish, Germans, and English, pushing their way into the deep hollows, the hollers, and carving out a life of fierce independence. They brought their own superstitions with them, their own tales of witches and haints, which mingled and mixed with the older legends of the land. But the most dramatic chapter in this region's story was written in black. Coal. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the demand for coal skyrocketed, and this corner of the world just happened to be sitting on a treasure trove. Corporations descended, buying up land and mineral rights, and building entire towns from scratch. These were the company towns. Places like Thurmond, Kmart, and Nuttleburg in West Virginia, or Wilder in Tennessee, sprang up almost overnight. The coal companies owned everything: the houses, the store, the school, the church. They often paid the miners not in U.S. dollars, but in scrip, a private currency that could only be spent at the company store, trapping families in a cycle of debt they could never quite escape. Life was hard. The work was brutal and dangerous. Black lung was a constant specter, and the threat of a mine collapse hung over every single family. And yet, inside this system of exploitation, powerful communities were forged. Neighbors had to rely on each other, bound by shared hardship and a shared pride in knowing they were fueling a nation. They were tight-knit and resilient, and they filled these valleys with life. But the boom wasn't meant to last. As we drive deeper, the signs of this history are everywhere, if you know what you're looking for. A crumbling stone wall half swallowed by ivy. The faint outline of an old railroad bed running beside a creek. These are the breadcrumbs leading us towards Silas Creek, a town that lived and died by the coal seam. a place that embodies both the dream and the nightmare of the Appalachian coal rush. The air grows cooler, heavier. There's this feeling of anticipation, a sense that we aren't just driving up a mountain, but traveling back in time to a place where the past isn't quite past at all. Section 2. The final approach. The road just ends. It doesn't stop at a gate or a barrier. It simply dissolves into the forest floor, becoming an overgrown path no wider than a deer trail. This is as far as the car can take us. From here on, we're on foot. I shoulder my pack, check my compass, and take one last look at the world of roads and engines before plunging into the green stillness. The trail to Silas Creek isn't exactly a welcome mat. It's a steep, tough climb, and the air is thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. Every step takes focus, trying to navigate a tangle of roots that snake across the path and slick, moss-covered rocks that seem designed to send you tumbling. The forest is so dense that the canopy of hemlock and oak creates a kind of perpetual twilight, even in the middle of the day. The silence is broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the crunch of my boots. It's a beautiful kind of isolation, but it's also unnerving. You get the distinct feeling of being watched, not by a person, but by the forest itself. It's an old feeling, one that countless travelers in these mountains have talked about. The sense that the trees have memory and the hills have eyes. This kind of journey was a daily reality for the people who once lived here. They didn't have cars to drop them at the edge of the wilderness. These rugged paths were their highways. They walked these trails to hunt, to visit family, or to fetch a doctor. Children walked paths just like this one to get to a one-room schoolhouse. Their entire lives were dictated by the unforgiving land they called home. After about an hour of hiking, I see the first real sign. Half buried in mud and leaves is a piece of rusted steel, unmistakably a piece of railroad track. A little farther on, another one. This was the spur line, the iron artery that once connected Silas Creek to the main railway in the valley below. It carried the coal out and brought supplies and people in. Now, it's just a ghost being slowly digested by the earth. The very existence of towns like Silas Creek was precarious, completely dependent on the mine. When the coal was plentiful, the town thrived. But the industry was volatile. The Great Depression, labor strikes, and the slow shift to other energy sources started to chip away at King Coal's empire. Mechanization was also a huge factor. New machines could do the work of dozens of men, leading to massive layoffs. For so many company towns, when the main coal seam was exhausted or just wasn't profitable anymore, the company would shut it all down, pack up, and leave. Sometimes, the eviction was sudden, giving families only days to vacate the homes they had lived in for generations. They left behind entire communities, which, without their economic heart, simply withered and died. The houses rotted, the structures collapsed, and the forest, always waiting at the edges, began its slow, relentless reclamation. The trail starts to level out. Through the trees, I can see shapes that don't belong here. Straight lines, right angles, the unnatural geometry of human construction. A chimney stands alone like a stone sentinel, its house long since crumbled to nothing around it. Then another foundation, a rectangle of stacked stone, now filled with weeds. We're getting close. The feeling of being an intruder gets stronger. This was someone's home. And as the forest grows quiet around me, I can't help but wonder if it holds something more than just echoes. Section 3. Arrival at Silas Creek. First impressions. I push through a final, thick wall of rhododendron and just stop. The breath catches in my throat. Before me, nestled in a small, unnaturally flat clearing, are the remains of Silas Creek. It's not just one or two ruins. It's the skeleton of an entire town. The main street is still visible, now just a wide, grassy lane flanked by the ghosts of buildings. On one side stands a row of identical, boxy structures in various states of decay. These were the miners' houses, the classic salt box homes the company provided. Some have collapsed into a heap of weathered planks and rusted nails. Others are still standing, but just barely. Their porches sag, their roofs are caved in, and empty window frames stare out like hollow eye sockets. Trees are growing straight through the middle of what used to be living rooms. Nature isn't just covering this place, it's consuming it, pulling it right back into the soil. Straight ahead, at what must have been the center of town, is a larger, more imposing ruin. Its front has mostly fallen away, revealing a cavernous interior. That had to be the company's store, the economic and social heart of the town. It's where families used their company-issued scrip to buy everything from flour and lard to boots and fabric. It was a place of necessity, but also a place of control. Beyond it, a steeple, stripped of its bell and tilting at a scary angle, marks what's left of the town church. There's a profound sadness here, a tangible sense of loss that just hangs in the air. If you stand still long enough, you can almost hear the echoes of the past. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the rumble of coal cars, the shouts of children playing in the street, the murmur of conversation from a front porch on a summer evening. This wasn't just a bunch of buildings. It was a living community, full of hopes and dreams and struggles. People were born here, fell in love here, raised families here, and many died here. Now, all that's left is silence and decay. But there's another feeling, too. Something unsettling. The silence feels watchful. The way the shadows cling to the corners of the collapsing buildings feels heavy. It's the kind of place where your imagination can really run wild. And it's easy to see how legends get started in a place like this. When the sun goes down and the deep Appalachian night falls, when the only light is the moon and the only sound is the wind moaning through these skeletal houses, well, the mind can start to play tricks. Or maybe they aren't tricks. The people here brought their folklore with them, and they created new stories based on the strange things they saw in these isolated hills. They whispered tales of haunts, of spirits tied to the land, and of creatures that lurked just beyond the glow of their lanterns. Walking down this silent main street, it feels like those whispers never really left. They just became part of the forest, part of the ghost of Silas Creek. Section 4. The Company Store and the Mothman Legend. I make my way over to the largest ruin, the old company store. Its size alone tells you how important it was. This place was the town's nexus. Cautiously, I step through a collapsed section of the front wall. The floorboards are soft and spongy with rot, so I test each step before putting my full weight down. Inside, the sheer size of the space is surprising. A long, debris-covered counter runs the length of one wall. Behind it, shelves, now bare and collapsing, stretch all the way to the high ceiling. You can just picture this place bustling with activity. Miners coming off their shift, covered in cold dust, families trading scrip for the day's groceries. In the dim light, I spot small details. A rusted tin can in a corner, a shard of a dark brown glass bottle. On the floor, a single, disintegrating leatherwork boot. These things are so personal, so human. They're the last testaments to the lives lived here. This store was both a lifeline and a leash, providing for the miners while making sure they stayed indebted to the company. It was in places just like this, after a long day in the dark, that men would gather and share stories. And in the deep woods of Appalachia, those stories often took a turn toward the terrifying. One of the most famous and chilling of these legends comes from just a state away, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, but you can bet the tales traveled like wildfire through the coal camps. It's the legend of the Mothman. It all started on a November night in 1966. Two young couples were driving near an abandoned World War II munitions plant, an eerie, derelict place a lot like this one. Suddenly, their headlights caught something that froze them in terror. Standing by the road was a large, man-like figure, maybe 6 or 7 feet tall. It had enormous wings folded against its back and 2 huge, glowing red eyes. The witnesses said the eyes were hypnotic, terrifying. They panicked and sped away, But the creature launched itself into the air and chased them, easily keeping pace with their car even as they hit 100 miles per hour. They said it didn't really flap its wings, but just glided, making a high-pitched screeching sound as it followed them right to the city limits. Over the next 13 months, the sightings kept coming. More than 100 people reported seeing the man-sized bird. 2 volunteer firemen called it a large bird with red eyes. Another man who shined a flashlight at it said its eyes glowed like bicycle reflectors. The creature was officially dubbed the Mothman. Some people tried to explain it away. Experts suggested it could have been a misidentified sandhill crane, a very large bird with reddish coloring around its eyes. But the story took a darker, tragic turn. Many started to see the Mothman as an omen of disaster. On December 15, 1967, 13 months to the day after the sightings began, the Silver Bridge, connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio, collapsed during rush hour, tragically killing 46 people. Afterward, some claimed to have seen the Mothman on or near the bridge in the days leading up to the collapse. And then, the sightings just stopped. Standing here in the decaying shell of the Silas Creek Company store, the story feels chillingly close. This town, too, is a place defined by disaster and abandonment. Did the miners here have their own Mothman? Did they see strange figures in the woods or hear unnatural screeches in the night? What would you do if you were out here, miles from anyone, and your lantern light fell upon a pair of glowing red eyes staring back at you from the dark? The line between folklore and a terrifying reality feels incredibly thin right now. The shadows in the corners of this ruin seem to deepen, and for a moment, I feel a prickling on the back of my neck, as if I'm being watched from the darkness just beyond the walls. Section 5. The Miners' Cabins and the Bell Witch. I leave the heavy silence of the company store and walk toward the row of miners' cabins. Each one is a copy of the next, a reminder of the purely functional, assembly line nature of these towns. I find one that's mostly intact, its front door hanging open on a single rusted hinge. I step inside, my footsteps echoing in the small space. The interior is stark. It's basically one large room, maybe once partitioned by a curtain to create a little privacy. A rusted, pot-bellied stove sits in the center, the heart of the home where a family would have gathered for warmth. In one corner, a simple iron bed frame is collapsing into a pile of rust. It's hard to imagine an entire family living in such a cramped space, but for many, this was it. Life was a cycle of back-breaking labor and simple existence. The men would spend 10 or 12 hours a day underground in the dark, while the women managed the household, tended gardens, and raised kids under the constant shadow of the company. In the quiet of this small, broken home, another legendary Appalachian story comes to mind. It's a tale of a haunting so intense and so well documented it's been called America's greatest ghost story. It's the legend of the Bell Witch. The story starts in the early 1800s in Tennessee, on the farm of a man named John Bell. It began subtly. The family started hearing strange noises, knocking on the walls, scratching at the doors, the sound of chains being dragged across the floor. Soon, things escalated. The entity started to speak. It was a disembodied female voice that grew from whispers to hurling insults at the family from anywhere in the house. It claimed to be the spirit of a former neighbor, Kate Batts, and became known as the Bell Witch. The haunting turned violent, and it seemed to focus its rage on John Bell and his youngest daughter, Betsy. It would pull the children's hair, pinch them, and slap them so hard it left red welts and handprints on their skin. Betsy, in particular, was tormented relentlessly. The story spread like wildfire. Soon, people were traveling from all over to witness the haunting for themselves. Even future President Andrew Jackson decided to visit. Legend says that as his wagon approached the farm, it stopped dead and couldn't be moved. Jackson supposedly exclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, that must be the Bell Witch." A voice then declared it would let them pass and see them again that night. The bell, which seemed to have two main goals. First, it terrorized Betsy's suitor so badly that she finally broke off their engagement, which seemed to please the spirit. The second, more sinister goal was the death of John Bell. The witch tormented him, cursing him and causing physical ailments. In December of 1820, John Bell was found unresponsive in his bed. Next to him was a vial of a strange, dark liquid. The witch's voice proudly claimed it had poisoned him. This became the only case in American history where a state supposedly attributed a death to a supernatural entity. Standing in this desolate cabin, I think about the power of that story. For families living in places like Silas Creek, isolated and surrounded by a vast, intimidating wilderness, a story like the Bell Witch wasn't just a spooky tale. It was a warning. It spoke to a deep-seated fear of unseen forces, of curses, and of malevolent spirits that could invade your home and tear your family apart. I look at the decaying bed frame and the cold stove and wonder what stories were told in this room. What fears were whispered in the dark after the kids were asleep? What strange noises did they hear in the night? And did they ever wonder if a spirit like Kate Batts had followed them into the deep hollows of Silas Creek? Section 6. The ridge overlooking town and the brown mountain lights. As the afternoon sun dips low, casting long, warped shadows across the town, I decide to hike to a ridge that overlooks the clearing. From the top, the view is breathtaking. You can see the entire layout of Silas Creek below, a small, wounded patch in an endless sea of green and gold autumn leaves. Beyond it, the Appalachian Mountains roll away to the horizon, ridge after magnificent ridge fading into a blue haze. It's up on ridges just like this, looking out into the vast, dark expanse of the mountain nights, that one of Appalachia's most beautiful and baffling mysteries unfolds. It's a phenomenon that's been seen for centuries, long before the first coal towns were ever built. They're known as the Brown Mountain Lights. These mysterious lights are seen in North Carolina's Pisgah National Forest, not so far from here as the crow flies. For generations, people have reported seeing glowing orbs of light rise up from the valley, hover above the ridges, and then just disappear. They're described as being white, red, yellow, or blue. Sometimes they're small, flickering like candles, and other times they're large, fiery balls. They float, they dance, they pulsate, and then they vanish without a sound. The legends about the lights are as old as the mountains. The most famous story comes from the Cherokee. They say that around the year 1200, a great battle was fought on Brown Mountain between the Cherokee and Catawba warriors. Afterward, the Cherokee women went out into the night with torches, searching for their husbands and sons lost in the fight. According to the legend, the lights are the spirits of these women, still carrying their ghostly lanterns, forever searching. Of course, science has tried to find an explanation. In the early 20th century, a U.S. Geological Survey concluded the lights were just the headlights of a train on a newly built railway. But when a massive flood washed those tracks away a few years later, the lights kept appearing. Other theories have suggested everything from swamp gas to car headlights from a distant highway to a weird form of ball lightning. But no single explanation has ever been able to account for all the sightings, especially the ones from before cars or trains even existed. The mystery endures. I'm sitting here on this ridge above Silas Creek as the sky turns a deep shade of violet. If you listen, there's nothing but the sound of the wind in the pines. But as darkness falls, it's easy to imagine seeing it. A single point of light, rising from the valley floor. Then another, dancing silently in the distance. What would that feel like? To witness something so beautiful, so ethereal, and so completely unexplainable? It's a powerful reminder that there are still mysteries in this world that science can't neatly file away. In Appalachia, these mysteries aren't just curiosities. They are part of the fabric of the place. As the first stars begin to appear, I look down at the dark, silent ruins of the town below, and realize that Silas Creek is more than just a ghost town. It's a vessel for all these stories, a place where the line between history, legend, and the supernatural is forever blurred. It's been an incredible experience being out here, stepping back in time and connecting with the stories that echo through these mountains. These places hold so much history and so much mystery, and it feels important that we remember them. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really does help, and it lets me continue bringing these stories to you. And I would love to hear from you in the comments. Do you have similar legends where you live? Have you ever visited a ghost town and felt that strange connection to the past? Share your stories. Let's keep these conversations and these memories alive. As I pack up my gear for the long hike back in the fading light, I take one last look down at Silas Creek. It's almost completely swallowed by darkness now, its ruins melting back into the shadows of the forest they came from. In another few generations, there might be nothing left here at all, just a few stone foundations and some rusted metal. The forest will win. It always does. But the stories will remain. They'll be told around campfires, passed down from parents to children, whispered by those who ventured deep enough into these woods to feel their presence. The tales of the hard-working miners, the chilling specter of the Bell Witch, the terrifying omen of the Mothman, and the beautiful, haunting mystery of the Brown Mountain Lights. These aren't just ghost stories. They're the cultural memory of a region, a way of making sense of a world that was often harsh, unforgiving, and filled with unknowns. These abandoned towns are more than just hollow shells. They're sacred ground, soaked in the triumphs and tragedies of the people who lived here. They're monuments to how things fade, but also to how people endure. And they're a powerful reminder that even after the last house has fallen, the mountains remember. The secrets are still here, waiting in the silence for anyone willing to come and listen.